And we welcome you on into another episode of the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Pinnell alongside Mitchell Balla here to give you the latest in the athletics world. Mitch, good to be back for the start of this week, man. We're coming off a weekend in which there was a lot of stuff happening into this Monday show, and we'll be here to cover as much of it as we possibly can.
That's a good way to put it, because I feel like every time we come off the weekend, Mitch, there's so much to cover. It's always, are we going to be able to get to it all in an ample amount of time to showcase everything for our listeners? And there's plenty to cover today.
Absolutely. We usually average around 45 to an hour 15 on these. So that's what we'll likely be doing. And we will also be going over some of the main topics here throughout the week, including the high school, collegiate, and professional levels. But we start off here by giving you our big time sports schedule of the week. Now, what does that mean? That talks about all of the upcoming broadcasts that you will be seeing here on Big Time Sports. Of course, for more information on that, you can hit us up on Facebook or Instagram, Big Time Sports Ohio. You can also go to Twitter at BTS Ohio and find a lot of information there. And of course, go to bigtimesportsohio.com. You can also go to bigtimesportsohio.com/schedule if you want to find the latest games upcoming in your area. Mitch, we go over now the upcoming broadcasts of the Big Time Sports Show. Who can we expect to see out this week from the Stark County area?
Well, Mitch, this week you get to meet and learn a little bit about the North Canton Hoover Vikings boys basketball team. They are the North or Stark County TV show this week, recording Wednesday and airing at normal times like in weeks past. So this week, get your fix on the Hoover boys basketball team.
Absolutely. And with that, on the Tuscarawas County side, it will be the boys basketball team from New Philadelphia High School. Should be a very interesting episode there. Old Melatone's Charlie Jones will be in there to talk with the Quaker boys. And we have a number of upcoming games in the Tuscarawas County and Stark County areas. We have these ones upcoming here, in which on Wednesday, we'll see those New Philadelphia boys take on the Crimson Tornadoes at Dover High School. That game you can find on your local listings on replay, upcoming this Tuesday night at 10:30 and Wednesday, January 12th at 4 p.m. And that's once again Tuesday at 10:30 and Wednesday at 4 p.m. And then later on in the week, we will have a Highland versus Garaway matchup on Friday coming from Sugar Creek, the Hawks taking on the top team in the IVC South, the Pirates. You can find that game on Friday at 11 o'clock or on Saturday, January 14th at 2 p.m. And those games you can find on, if you're in the southern part of the area, the Tuscarawas County area, you can find that on Channel 15 on your local cable access. Or if you're on the north side in Stark, you can find it on Massillon Cable 128 or Spectrum 989. And speaking of Stark, Mitch, who do we got on this week on Big Time Sports?
Well, Mitch, we have two games this week in Stark County, and they are going to be huge games. One team featured twice, and the Federal League is as hot as ever. I know we're going to transition that here in a second. First, tomorrow night, McKinley at Jackson. This is a McKinley team that got off to a hot start, cooled down a little bit, but Jackson now sits atop the Federal League after an impressive week stretch and a couple losses by their teams. This McKinley team came to Jackson last year and ran them out of their own gym. Jackson is going to be motivated to get back. That is a Big Time Sports game of the week. That'll be Tuesday night. And then Friday, Mitch, you want to talk about a tale of two games potentially. Jackson at Green. For those that remember, Jackson played Green early on this season. It was Green's first game of the season, and Green was without a couple players. Now Jackson gets to go to Green, who, Mitch, outside of Jackson, may be the hottest team in the Fed. And boy, oh boy, is this one shaping up to be one of the top games in the area and possibly all year, and really could decide who wins the Fed. So that is a Friday night game, Jackson at Green. Replay times per usual for Stark County times and channels, the same that Mitch Spinell just gave out for all you viewers out there.
And once again, I'll go over it once again. If you're in the Tuscarawas County area and you have local access to cable, you can also go to channel 15, channel 15 in the area. You can also go, if you're on the Stark County side, to Massillon Cable Channel 128 or Spectrum 989 at the listed times you can find on bigtimesportsohio.com/schedule. Should be a very interesting week here. A lot of great games upcoming in the area. So, Mitch, We go over now to the Stark County side like we usually start off with. I'm very fascinated with the Green Bulldogs, but we'll get to them in a second because, as you mentioned before, they're one of the hottest teams in Stark County right now. I'm very fascinated by this game that happened last week in Canton, where the Lake Blue Streaks, led by another stellar performance by one of the top area players, Chance Kazenheiser, 30 points on that game. They handed the Glen Oak Golden Eagles their second loss of the season, second consecutive, by the way, 59-49. Mitch, are we starting to see now it getting a little bit the competition being a little more heightened for Glen Oak once they've gotten into Federal League play?
Yes, Mitch. I think it's a combination of that. And I think it's a combination of Lake may not always have the most talented team, but they will not be out coached. Head coach Tom McBride over there at Lake does a phenomenal job. And you saw it once again, the way Glen Oak plays and coming off that first loss, there was a team that really wanted to come out and prove that, maybe it was a fluke loss, especially with how they lost at home to Jackson last week. Give Lake credit. Kastenheiser comes in. He was our big time sports player of the game. He is a tremendous talent, one of the top guards in Northeast Ohio. And Lake gets a massive win, Mitch. Now, the record overall may not be comparable to what Jackson or Glen Oak or Greens is. They're still right in the thick of the Federal League play and Federal League standings. And now we're about to hit round 2, right? Jackson plays McKinley Tuesday, and then we'll have played everybody in the Federal League at least one time. And then Friday starts round 2, playing Green for the second time. So just because these teams are losing now doesn't mean that we're anywhere near the final standings projections, but that was a massive win for Lake. We talked about Lake losing to Massillon just a few weeks ago. And, that was a game that they did not think they should have lost. They could have played a lot better. And now Glen Oak, Mitch, 2 losses in a row after starting 9-0, both losses on your home court. Where do they go from here? This is still a very tough team, but a young team. I was able to talk to Coach Rick Hairston before the Jackson game, and it was up on our Big Time Sports page on YouTube. They start 3 sophomores and 1 junior. They have 2 seniors, 1 starter, and they have sophomores off the bench. They're a young team. So the fact that they're 9-2 is still extremely impressive because nobody expected them to be here. But Rick Hairston is a really, really good coach too, Mitch. So don't think he's going to make necessary adjustments the second time around. But what can you say about Lake? They're a team you can never count out, no matter what the year, no matter what type of talent you have on your team versus them. McBride knows how to get that team ready. So that was a big game for Lake and a big game in the Federal League because it led to now Jackson and Green sitting atop the Federal League after their wins over the weekend.
And with that victory, the Blue Streaks moved to 4-2 in the Federal League, 6-5 overall. And you mentioned Green, I would say a statement victory this past week over the McKinley Bulldogs at McKinley, 74-51. Brady Rollison had as good of a night as Kazenheiser did, 30 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 steals. I mean, he kind of did it all for a Bulldogs team that went like Jackson before early in the season, went into McKinley and put an exclamation point on that type of victory.
Brady Rollison, Mitch, has come into his own. This is a tremendous top talent in the state of Ohio for baseball, folks. If you don't know who Brady Rollison is, he is an Ohio State signee in the 2024 class. He is a shortstop. He is one of the best players in the Federal League and one of the best players in Ohio. Basketball is his second sport. It doesn't matter though, Mitch. He's a competitor. He's out here right now, not fully healthy either. Let me add that to this. Not fully healthy, scoring 30 points at the field house and getting a massive road win for Green that now sets up a showdown for sole possession of first place this upcoming Friday. I think though for Green, Mitch, they add a piece back the past couple of weeks that was missing to start the season. And Nick Bungalow is back, a 6'7" sophomore post. And not only is he a post, Mitch, he can shoot and he can ball handle. Maybe not somebody you always want to ball handle, but he takes so much more pressure off the other guys around him because teams have to key in on him now because you can't leave a 6'7" guy open down below. He had 16 and 6, I believe, but that is Green's statement when they are back to where they expect to be under head coach Mark Kinsley, who we got to speak to earlier in the season, that he admitted, Mitch, it was going to be tough to get off to start the season because of how the schedule shook out. They lost 2 of their first 3 Federal League games, yet here they are. And they are hungry and they're looking for revenge this upcoming Friday when Jackson goes there on the Big Time Sports game of the week. And I'm very excited to see how that goes. But Green has, you don't want to say turn their season around because we're about midway point, but from where they started their first 3 games, Mitch, to where they are now, a completely different team. And McKinley a team that coming into the season, Mitch, people thought was the front runner to win the Federal League. They've had a couple losses that are just unlike McKinley Bulldogs teams in years past. And you wonder, where do they go? But like I said about Glen Oak and Lake, now it was round 2 in the Federal League. So McKinley is more than capable of doing the exact thing that Glen Oak has done to them and Green to those teams now on their home courts.
Absolutely. And I'm very curious to see where these teams will be unfolding throughout the week, heading into those Friday matchups that we previously mentioned before. And before we go to break, we want to give a shout out, by the way, before we also go into the Tuscarawas County scores. There was a performance on Friday night that saw a record broken out in Louisville. Will Aljancic has been one of the top scorers for the last season or two, maybe even 3, for a Leopards team that they square the offense on his shoulders, and he proved it with his performance on Friday night, in which the Leopards won 55-46 over visiting Canfield. Aljancic broke the school's all-time scoring record just a few weeks after reaching 1,000 career points. He now has 1,149 career points, passing the record originally set by Chris Liberator.
And that was a 6-year-old record. Before that, it was a record that had stood a long time, Mitch. We're just nearing the halfway point. Not only did he break the record, Mitch, he's going to be able to set the record higher and higher and higher as the season goes on. And like you mentioned, this is a team that puts the offense on his shoulders, and the Leopards go as far as he can go. And he's a tremendous player. If you have not been able to get out to see Aljancic play yet, he is worth the price of admission. He is a Division II commit, I believe, to the University of Findlay. He is going that is a steal for the University of Findlay. I believe he's a 3-star for anybody out there that likes looking at ratings or rankings for high school athletes, but just a tremendous player, someone that works on his craft seriously, and someone that takes this team to the next level. And he is just a tough player to defend, Mitch. 30 points. He needed 30 to break the record. He got 30 in that 55-46 win. So 25 points coming from the rest of his team while he poured in 30. 1,149 points after Friday night. Where is the record going to stop once his career is over at Louisville is the question. Will anybody ever be able to touch that is the next question.
Time will certainly tell. And obviously, congratulations to him from BTS here on the BTS podcast show. I mean, it's really unbelievable. And then when you go over to the South side, a number of games were played from this past weekend that gave a lot of insight to what we should look out for here in the IVC. There was a big matchup in Berlin the other night in which Indian Valley had a solid fourth quarter to top the Highland Hawks. It was 47-36. I had to make sure I got the calculated score there. Tyson Pryor, Braden Troy had a top game for the Braves, who currently sit very close in the IVC South standings. They're 3-3 right now behind Garaway and Sandy Valley, who are both at 5-1. Now, Sandy Valley was able to win against East Canton this past weekend, where Jordan Wakefield had a game high 20 points and Dante Fialo also had 12. Strasburg's boys, by the way, I was at this game Friday night. Strasburg scored 1 point in the first quarter against visiting Claymont on their Hall of Fame night, which they inducted a number of new class of 2023 former student athletes. So you're thinking, well, what's this say about Strasburg right now? They got things going, especially in the second quarter, didn't look back. They even outscored Claymont the rest of the way, 49-21. And Jake Ryan had a very solid game, 21 points. He's proving himself a very unique scorer for the Tigers, and that a program that for the last couple of seasons has been very kind of fundamental, very sound fundamentally. They're not the most flashy team in terms of their offensive or defensive prowesses. And then Ryan, a transfer over from Texas, brings a unique style of, especially on the offensive side, to this team. And at times it can be very, very efficient. I mean, I think he even scored all 10 of the team's points in the final quarter to cap off this unbelievable outing. So Strasburg is still keeping up pace in the IVC North, even though Buckeye Trail and Malvern sit just ahead of them. Malvern is still undefeated in IVC play. And then, of course, you also have the Garaway Pirates, who were able to pull out a victory this past week over Caldwell on the road. So they are at 8-1 on this season, or 9-1, excuse me, on this season. So we will see. We will see who will be the top front runners in the conference, the area conference divisions by the year's end. So when we come back, we'll be going over more of the sports world, including a flurry of moves being made on what's being called Black Monday. We'll be back right after these messages. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
Buying a home has never been so affordable with record low interest rates. Hartzler's Quality Housing is ready to put over 40 years of experience to work for you. Family owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's has a wide selection of model homes on site with a knowledgeable team to help make your new home a reality. Open 6 days a week. Visit them off I-77 in Dover or online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
You invest a lot in your home and vehicle purchases. Van Nostrand Young and Associates want you to feel secure should anything happen to those investments. We partnered with providers like Grange Insurance and other industry leaders to be sure you're presented with the most complete coverage to fit your needs. Because we're not only here to protect the items you invest in, we're here to protect your future as well.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
When others treat your fries as an afterthought, all you're left with are cold, soggy fries. That's why Wendy's new fries are ones you won't forget, guaranteed to be hot and crispy, or we'll replace them. We're talking natural cut, skin-on fries, perfectly seasoned with a hint of sea salt. In fact, they're even preferred almost 2-to-1 over McDonald's. These are fries so hot and crispy, they beg a new question.
What would you like with your fries?
Try them today, only at Wendy's.
At participating U.S. Wendy's, taste preference based on a national taste test by an independent research company.
And welcome you back here to the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell alongside Mitchell Balla. It's finally over, Mitch. We have gotten through 4.5 months of, ups and downs. A lot more downs, a lot than there were ups. But the NFL season for the Cleveland Browns is officially over after yesterday's 28-14 final to the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. And if you didn't think it could get more eventful for the Browns, it definitely did. Late breaking, I think it was last night, that the Browns are officially moving on from defensive coordinator Joe Woods after 3 seasons. So after all the talk we've had on this podcast over the last few months, the opinions that have been aired out, the opinions we've seen from the Cleveland faithful online and in real life, this is the move that people were wanting, and they get it. So now the Browns have to move on to try and build up a defense that seemed to be going in the right direction, then completely tanked out in year 3.
It was a move that I think a lot of us were pleading for since early in the season, Mitch. I mean, My whole thing with them in terms of Joe Woods and the move is this is year 3 of the same system with a group of mostly the same players, and you are still having miscommunication issues. To me, that's a giant red flag. We saw it against Carolina. We were bailed out by Cade York. We saw it against the Jets, where you blew a 30-17 lead with 1:30 to go. And it happened all season long. And now you just wonder what route the Browns go. And we can probably get into that later on in this show and later on down the road. There's already reports the Browns are seeking permission for numerous candidates. This was a move that was going to happen, I believe. I personally wanted another move to happen. No surprise, the move was made after a loss to Pittsburgh.
Yes.
That's typically when the losses are always made. Somehow we always play Pittsburgh, and generally the next day a move is made. Going to the 28-14 loss, because it's the last game we're going to cover now for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of the third quarter, Mitch, Deshaun Watson didn't look that bad. He didn't. Deshaun Watson had 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
The offensive line, Mitch, looks like the offensive line from 2018 when Baker Mayfield was a rookie. It looks like an offensive line that cannot pass block right now. It looks like guys are just giving up. I mean, Jed Wills is a guy that I believe is a name you have to watch for this offseason, whether they trade him, cut him. I don't know, because his play this year, Mitch, was rather pathetic in some aspects. I'm not going to say he was bad all year. Yesterday, though, was a pretty eye-opening day for him. I don't get some of the play calls still. You have your best player on the field run 12 times, Nick Chubb. And it brings me now to what is probably going to be the hottest take I have as we hit the offseason. And it's, are the Browns going to trade Nick Chubb? Are the Browns going to take one of the guys they owe the most money to, a guy that looks like since Deshaun Watson has come back, Mitch, they're not going to utilize, and get rid of him? Because to me, if you're not going to play him the way he should be played and feed him the ball, then why would you keep him around? And I'm not for it. Let me preface that right now. I'm not for it at all. He is a top 3 running back in the NFL. You know what he's capable of. We've seen it out here for 4 years. He is a tremendous running back, but I just can't get over the fact that there was only one game this year where if he had over 20 rushes, you lost. And that game was against the Saints, where you still threw the ball 31 times in the wind and snow and cold.
Yes.
And you let him get 12 carries yesterday for 77 yards. To me, that's still just a poor move on the coaching and the offensive play calling.
I think it's first of all, I think it's too early to make any trade discussions involving Chubb. Unless he has a complete heel turn in terms of personality this offseason, he's not I don't think he's gonna go to this team and be like, I want out, I need out, get me out. As far as yesterday goes, especially with that offensive line, I chalked it up to a team that was just kind of checked out. That team was, a lot of the team was checked out, it seems. And you even saw it from some of the pressers, even today, where I believe it was John Johnson, who thankfully it doesn't look like he's going to need surgery this offseason after sustaining that injury late in the game yesterday. He was asked what he wants from the new defensive coordinator during the Browns Monday exiting pressers. And there was the one quote, I believe it was here on Twitter, from Cameron Justice. And it was, quote, "I think getting your players to play," unquote. It's only 7 words, but they speak thousands of words worth to me, because it just, and we've seen it throughout the whole year, where it's just this inability to be able to make changes during the game, be able to transition from one thing to another. The way in which the run defense just looked atrocious, especially compared to the pass defense, which could at times have some serious gaps and miscommunications. It really is surprising, because this was a guy whose defense ranked pretty highly in 2021. For all the flaws that the offense had from last season, you could say, oh, with the defense, you could chalk it up to the defense. Oh, the defense did this right. They did that right. And then you go into this year where the defense really at times could be the make or break difference in a number of games the Browns could have won. I think it was the right move. I think it was the right move to move on. I'm very curious to see what candidates will be up for stock here. You have apparently reports that the team wants to request permission for a Brian Flores interview. Flores, the linebackers coach for the Steelers, obviously former Dolphins head coach. Gerard Mayo from New England, excuse me. That's a curious one, because New England's weaknesses right now, as we saw yesterday, isn't necessarily the defense. The defense can do some decent things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with Flores, Flores has a lot of good stock among a lot of NFL fans because the way he exited Miami or was exited from Miami, a lot of teams would like to bring him in. And I'm sure the Browns would like to bring him in his scheme, even though he runs, I believe it was, let me just make sure I got my notes here. He runs a 3-4 type defense when a lot of times the Browns, I've heard from others, operate best around a 4-3.
When it comes to scheme, Mitch, it's not going to matter who we bring in, because I do believe Joe Woods was given a raw hand with the type of personnel they had. You have linebackers that kept getting hurt because they are undersized compared to other NFL linebackers. You have holes being formed from an offensive side as your opponent being formed easily for runners because your tackles are so small. This is also on Andrew Berry in lack of drafting and lack of signing free agents and getting the necessary pieces to be better. Now, they've put tons of money into the secondary, right? I think we can agree with that. Draft picks and free agent contracts have been put into the secondary, and there was a lot of blunders there throughout the year. No matter what the Browns do defensive coordinator wise, they have to add the right players and personnel, because you cannot get away with this small linebacker, or else you're going to be right back to where you are with what? Did we end up with 4 linebackers out at one point this year, Mitch?
I think so.
Defensive tackles. I mean, I think Tommy Togiai played his second game in 2 years.
Yep.
I mean, we have guys that we're drafting that are undersized that we can't even play. And they're going to have to make major overhaul in terms of defense. But Mitch, I pose this to you not because I've been vocal about firing Kevin Stefanski.
Mm-hmm.
He is going to go into next season on the hot seat.
Yes.
I think it's fair enough to say that. And anybody that doesn't agree with that, I don't know what to tell you. Brian Flores is the guy I want, strictly because if you do go into the season with Stefanski on the hot seat and the Browns, which I hope does not happen, start 2-6 or 3-6 or 3-7, and they dismiss Stefanski, you have an actual head coach ready to take over in Brian Flores. I would put money on it, Mitch, that Brian Flores is not going to be somebody the Browns sign as defensive coordinator, just based off some of the things we've heard and what we've seen with other coaches. I believe, and how he left Miami. He is a guy that does not like to be told what to do, right? He did not want to tank for the Miami owner, and obviously they fired him. He does not want to be told what to do. He likes to have his own control, which for a organization like the Browns that are directionally aligned, you wonder if that's something that he could get over or they'd be willing to accommodate. I don't know. Mayo's interesting. He's a younger former player that I think resonates well within the locker room and has some energy. There's a name out there being floated around, Jim Schwartz. He's a name to keep an eye on because he is a coach that does value analytics to a degree, but also understands analytics go out the window in certain spots, right? We talked about it this year where analytics doesn't always take into account the fact that it's -9 degrees at kickoff versus the Saints, where he would know, or the fact that my defense is gassed. I think that is a name to watch out for. He also, as crazy as it sounds, has some sort of Ivy League background, which we know a lot of these guys in the front office do. So that might be something to look at. My choice is Flores, though. And Schwartz was head coach too, so he would probably be my second choice. But I am sitting here and saying that I wish Stefanski would have got fired, because now you are putting so much more pressure on him and the team next year, going into the season on the hot seat, that if it does not work out, Mitch, you are not only throwing another season away, you are putting yourselves back yet another year. And now you're talking about trying to get things going in year 3 of Deshaun Watson's 5-year deal, and what would eventually be the last year, I believe, of Nick Chubb's deal. And Myles Garrett just finished his 7th year. The window's now. There is no more, we're going to wait around and do this. I mean, if the Browns continue to do that, Mitch, we're going to be right back to where we were for pretty much our entire lives.
The Schwartz one is interesting because he was a former head coach with the Detroit Lions and spent many, many years as a defensive coordinator. Did step away from coaching 2 years ago and has spent time as a special advisor to the Titans. He also runs a 4-3 base defense. And I think he was at least a decent, more than decent defensive coordinator and a decent head coach, even though those Lions teams weren't able to really make the big step. I'm not sure about him compared to Flores and Mayo. Those are the two that I'm very hyper focused on, even though Zach Jackson on The Athletic did have a number of candidates listed today. It was guys the likes of Anthony Weaver, who works with the Ravens, Ejiro Evero, the Broncos defensive coordinator, because the Broncos defense, say what you want about the Broncos this year, the defense wasn't atrocious. So that is something that you could maybe look into, especially with a new coaching staff coming in.
There's two other names, Mitch, was Vic Fangio, which I don't think is a possibility.
No.
It seems like him and Sean Payton are pretty tied in together. The other name I've seen floated around, I'm not sure how it would work, is Mike Zimmer, the former Vikings head coach. And the only reason I'm curious how that would work is you're talking about bringing in Kevin Stefanski's former boss for Kevin Stefanski to be the boss of. And you just don't know how that dynamic would work.
I don't like that. I don't like the sound of that.
I personally don't like it. I'm just putting it out there. It's a name being floated around. I don't know if Zimmer is willing to take something like that. I mean, be bossed around by a guy you gave his first shot to in the NFL.
Yeah.
Is just, and that, to me, that has nothing to do with football. That's more of a pride thing. Is Zimmer able to put his pride up to the side? We've seen it before with someone like Norv Turner when he was here as offensive coordinator, Mitch. I mean, there's a number of guys that you've seen it with before.
Well, that kind of ties in back to your talk about how you don't think Flores will go to the Browns, because that could easily put some serious steam on Stefanski's back, to where if he doesn't get the job done, you can just easily get rid of him if you need to, because there's a guy who's already had head coaching experience and who was capable of taking a team to a winning record and maybe even the playoffs. You know, I'm very curious as to what if they would allow that to happen, or if Stefanski would allow that to go through. And I've had my things about Stefanski this year, where I think he is I think he can be a good coach. I think with the system the Browns run, they can also run into this thing where he may not be the head of everything. You know what I mean? Like some guys just have the standing in these NFL organizations. And of course, the organizations are always run owner, front office, coaching, and all that. But there are some different cases than others. Bill Belichick has a lot of standing in the New England Patriots organization because he's Bill Belichick and he's done what he's done. Kevin Stefanski is a young first-time head coach, 3 years into his first tenure, and that can easily run into some issues regarding who really makes the decisions for a team.
Yeah. And I think that Kevin Stefanski's biggest flaw is situational decisions. I mean, how many times did we see it this year where, whether it was timeouts on the field, going for two versus kicking field goals and extra points, and how many times it came back to bite the Browns? Mitch, I also think there's something to say for if you're seeing improvement or if you're not seeing improvement. And look, you can say whatever you want about this year. I was pretty pessimistic to start because I didn't see this team going anywhere based off Deshaun being suspended 11 games. I didn't think Brissett was going to be good enough to win you the number of games you had to win. The Browns have won 11 games in Kevin Stefanski's first year, 8 games in his second year, and 7 games in his third year. They have went third place, tied for third place, last place in the AFC North. They have gotten worse every year Kevin Stefanski has coached. On the flip side, you look at somebody like Dan Campbell, Mitch. The Lions finally backed off and let them see it through. And they were one loss away from another team, by another team, from going to the playoffs, which we'll probably preview or get into next.
Yeah, we'll get into that one. Yep.
There has been concerning things. And here's the other thing. After last year, Mitch, it was Baker Mayfield. He's gone.
Yeah.
Now it was Joe Woods. He's gone. There is no other scapegoat. It is Kevin Stefanski now. If something does not change, it is Kevin Stefanski. And that's my biggest worry and why I think it's a mistake to go in next year knowing he's on the hot seat. Because if we see the same thing over and over, now look, maybe there's a few breakdowns defensively because you have a new coordinator and maybe you run a new system. You're going to have to live with that. But in terms of offensive things and in terms of situational awareness and decisions, there's not going to be any more scapegoats now, Mitch. It's Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah, there's also the scapegoat of the suspension for Watson this season,
right.
and that's not going to be back this coming year. So you're pretty much at the fullest strength the start of year you've had in a long time, and if you don't get it done, then it might be officially time to move on. I don't expect them to be moving on this offseason, but there's a very real possibility that by week 7 or 8 next year, depending on where we are, that we could see some changes. And I don't want to see changes. I don't want to change anymore.
I hope I'm wrong. Trust me. I hope I sit here and I hope I'm wrong, because I don't want to see changes anymore. And to my point, if you're going to do them, I'd rather do it now to where you have a full off season, not middle of the season where a season is wasted. We're gonna have to wait and see. I do hope I'm wrong. I mean, Mitch, the bright side of this team and being so talented on paper, which I'm done with. I'm not going to say that anymore. You finish 4th place. You should have an easy schedule next year. We already know who the Browns' opponents are. We already know where they're playing on the road and where they're playing at home. We don't know when they're playing those opponents. You're playing some bad teams, Mitch. And the only nice thing about finishing last, you saw it this year with a team like the Jaguars going from worst to first in their division. When you finish last, you play other teams that finish 4th place in their division. You're going to have some cupcake games potentially. They have to win those games. This can no longer be the Cleveland Browns that loses to bad teams if they're going to make a run, especially when you're playing teams that were just as bad, if not worse than you next season.
We're going to be talking about some changes that happened yesterday and today after this upcoming break. We'll also go over the upcoming postseason, which is now officially set. So we'll be back right after these messages.
The Furby Electric Supply Company has bright ideas for your home. Save money by converting to energy-efficient electrical products or add ambiance with beautiful lighting features. It begins with a professional consultation and a visit to the Furby Lighting Showroom. Then certified Furby contractors complete your project right and on time. Since 1934, 4 generations have built a reputation of quality and trust, and they offer emergency services too. Just visit Furby.com. That's F-U-R-B-A-Y. The Furby Electric Supply Company.
You asked for it and we listened. Buckeye Career Center is now offering Certified Nail Technician as an adult education program. This 216-hour course begins in November and will run Tuesday through Thursday evenings from 5 to 9 p.m. Learn manicures, pedicures, infection control, salon operations, and more. Other part-time certification courses starting this fall include phlebotomy and welding. Call 330-339-2288 to register or visit BuckeyeCareerCenter.org for more information.
If you're looking for a new or pre-owned car or truck, why not see the Parkway Auto Group? Parkway is a special group of automotive experts with 8 brands to satisfy your needs. Come see the difference at the Parkway Auto Group on Commercial Parkway in Dover. 8 brands and 1 family. It's Parkway Auto Group.
Fall is in the air and part-time career enhancement courses at Buckeye Career Center are on the horizon. Registration is now open for Introduction to Beekeeping, Basic Small Engine Repair, and Sign Language. These part-time offerings run on Tuesday evenings and begin in November. Let Buckeye Career Center help you learn a new skill or advance your current skill set. Call 330-339-2288 for more information or to reserve your seat in one of these or our other part-time classes.
You matter. Everyone plays a part. We all have a role. Each of us can make a difference. You do matter, and the best way to have a positive impact is to pay it forward. With each of us helping one another to cope, feel better, and know that we belong. Pass on the positivity today. Tell someone else they matter too. Alt Care.
Alt Care, Alt Care. Where you matter.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
And welcome you back here to the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Pinnell alongside Mitchell Balla. Mitch, we talked about some of the changes that we were going to be discussing before the last break, and there were a number of changes being made on this Black Monday. It is Black Monday in the NFL, and there are changes to be made for certain teams. One happened a few hours after yesterday's game. Another one happened this morning. We got to talk about the first one first because Lovie Smith is now out as the head coach of the Texans for not doing the one thing that he had to do, which is lose a football game. And I know what you're saying, going back to Brian Flores. Why would you want to lose a football game? Well, you just cost your team the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. The Houston Texans yesterday beat the Indianapolis Colts on what was essentially a Hail Mary and a 2-point conversion. And as a competitor, as a former athlete, I get it. You want to win a game no matter what the situation is once you go on that field. However, when I saw the team win, I thought to myself, oh, he's not going to be employed tomorrow. And sure enough, he isn't, because not only were the Texans one of the worst teams in the NFL this season, they weren't worst enough to get this franchise quarterback guaranteed. That's the thing, guaranteed now, because the Chicago Bears, after they lost to the Vikings yesterday, now hold the number 1 pick. And Chicago, say what you want about the team this year, they have a quarterback potentially. Justin Fields had some great flashes in year 2. And now where the Texans are a little stuck, because Chicago could easily use that pick or trade it off to another team who needs a franchise quarterback and get a huge draft haul in. That's where it's just unfortunate for me, at least.
Mitch, there's 2 ways about this Lovie Smith situation. I'm not a huge conspiracy theory guy. There's obviously always the thread you can go through on Twitter. Mm-hmm. There's the one that he already knew he was fired, so he said, you know what, I'm going to go out here and coach to win this game. Then there's the other rabbit hole you can go down that, oh, he was the former head coach for the Chicago Bears.
Yes.
Huh. And they won to let the Bears get the number 1 pick, who were actively sitting Justin Fields. Mm-hmm. Just something to think about. There was, I don't know. I'm all for winning games. Plus, if you're the Texans, Mitch, it's going to take a team to give up a whole lot to go up and get the number 1 pick right now, because the Bears aren't taking a quarterback. Plus, Mitch, hot take, Bryce Young's not going to be anything special. I think there's less pressure on the Texans now at the number 2 spot. If a team does go up there to take Bryce Young, to have your choice of taking CJ Stroud, or if you want to go with Will Levis, which I think is a mistake, but less pressure, look at a financial way, a little less in the money hit from the 1 pick, 2 pick. I don't know. I think Lovie Smith was going to be fired regardless. And this, to me, it's not like you went from the 2nd pick to the 6th pick, if that makes sense. You went one spot in a team, like you mentioned, that has their franchise quarterback, and their help is everywhere else on the football field. Offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, wide receiver. The Bears have so much they need to do that they're going, if they trade Mitch, they're going to hold somebody to a king's ransom. And I've already mentioned a couple teams to some friends. I mean, you look at someone like the Raiders potentially, you look at someone like the Colts potentially, where the head coach of the Bears just left, and Matt Eberflus. There's ties all around, but Lovie Smith being gone, it was a bizarre hire too. Let's be honest. It was a bizarre. This is now 2 coaches in 2 years for the Texans. Where do they go from here? There's already, I mean, you look at someone like Harbaugh from Michigan, who's reportedly already interviewed with the Broncos. The Panthers have interest. The Colts have interest. Do the Texans give him a call now and say, hey, which quarterback do you want? Or we can go get whoever you want potentially. The Texans also have the number 12 pick in the draft, Mitch. It's not out of the realm of possibility that they can trade back up to the number 1 spot and keep 2 or potentially keep number 12. That's not out of the realm of possibilities. They have so many picks. I believe they have 2 first-round picks the next 2 years or 3 years. And if it's not 3 years, then that means another 2 second-round picks. They have a plethora of picks that they can do if they feel threatened and if a team's going to jump up to get their guy. But I'm not buying this that, they fired him because they won a game. If you look at the reaction of those players yesterday, Mitch, those guys were happy to win a football game.
Oh yeah. And they should have been.
Did you see the Texans sideline? And they had played so well the past few weeks. I mean, you think taking the Cowboys to overtime, the Chiefs to overtime, beating the Titans. It was good to see them win, because I think they were a little bit better than 3-13. I thought they did a great job of tanking this year. And for the Bears, I don't know if you saw the old takes exposed tweet of somebody tweeting out after they were 2-1. Did you really think the Bears could lose or win only one more game the rest of the year? And they did. They did only win one more game the rest of the year.
They did. I mean, they're going to take Will Anderson probably, regardless of what's going on. Excuse me here, but they'll take Will Anderson. I mean, I think they're gonna have to get 2 and 12 from Houston in order to be able to trade back, and then maybe some more. I don't think they can keep that Browns pick if you're the Texans, but I still think that Houston can get the quarterback they want at number 1. Or if Indianapolis sells the barn basically to Chicago for the number 1, they can take who they want, and then Houston gets the next quarterback off the board, which if that's CJ Stroud, oh boy, but good luck, buddy.
Well, here's my whole thing is, if it is CJ Stroud, Mitch, this is a very deep class in wide receivers. But do you take the 12th pick and get Smith and Jigba? Do you pair the two up that had a phenomenal season at Ohio State 2 years ago? Obviously not this past season. It's a thought.
Possibly.
They have a lot of needs too, but just a thought. This is a very loaded wide receiver draft class as well.
Possibly. And then I feel half right after what happened today. I said before the season, my predictions from our NFL preview episode, which you can go back and watch here on YouTube or our podcasting platforms. I thought that Cliff Kingsbury was going to be the first head coach to be fired this season. He was not. He was fired this morning, apparently, after 4 seasons in Arizona. General Manager Steve Keim also stepping away from his general manager role to focus more on his health. He had to step down for a little bit this season. Yeah, it did seem like an odd choice when we first heard that Cliff Kingsbury, who never was like one of the premier guys in college, got this NFL position. But he had his moments, took a team to the playoffs one year, ended up getting bounced pretty early. It's not a great look, Mitch, when you sign an extension through 2027, 10 months ago, and now you're getting bounced.
And it's also a little bizarre too, when the end of the season, you knew you weren't going to be the team you should be with Kyler Murray going out to a torn ACL. This is more of, and we won't know, we're not Cardinals fans. We're obviously on the East Coast, they're out West. Did he lose the locker room? Or was this a move that the Cardinals realized they just had to make? And Mitch, the memo was sent out earlier this year by the NFL about how much money was owed to fired NFL coaches. Now that total is going to skyrocket because, like you said, they just signed him to an extension last offseason.
Yes.
Mitch, I've said this for years now. I didn't think he was a good coach. I don't know how you're a college football coach with Patrick Mahomes and never have a season above 500. And then you take a job at USC and then leave that job immediately to go to the NFL. And not only that, but the responsibilities he took on of being the head coach and play caller after being just a college coach. You know, sometimes you see these guys as coordinators in the NFL first before they do something like that. But this was a no-brainer to me. I honestly didn't think it was going to happen because of the extension he signed last offseason. This, to me, though, is the right move for the Cardinals because I just never, ever, ever thought that Cliff Kingsbury was going to be a very good NFL coach. There's people now, Mitch, that think he's going to be an offensive coordinator. I think he's more likely to go back to college.
Depends on the deal.
I think it depends on the money. You're going to go where the money's at. Although he's going to be, if he wants to not do anything for a year or two, Mitch, I think he's going to be A-okay after all the money he was guaranteed in that deal.
Quite possibly. So then we are officially done with the NFL regular season, and we go from the teams that are trying to figure themselves out going into the offseason to the teams who are still going in these upcoming playoffs. I mean, going from this past weekend, because we can get to talk about it on Thursday, I was unsure if Jacksonville was going to outthink itself out of a playoff spot, but they managed to settle down a bit, win the AFC South over a Titans team that, like, I feel for Joshua Dobbs. And I know it's mainly because he was on our team at some point this season. I felt for him. I think he was working as hard as he possibly could that game. I felt bad because it felt like he was playing for his NFL life in that game. And when your one of your final moments is getting hit and caused a fumble to go into the end zone for the game-winning touchdown, that feels like it's hard to come back from. But Jacksonville was able to get it done.
Yeah, you just wonder if he's there for longer than 17 days, Mitch. Is that different? What is the Titans' record if they just have a quarterback? I mean, Mike Vrabel, Mitch, is a guy that I would take in a heartbeat as a head coach because he always has his team ready to play no matter how many guys they're down or no matter who they're playing. I mean, Mike Vrabel is just a player's coach, and that is just such a tough spot for Josh Dobbs. And I thought he did about as well as he possibly could. 17 days he was with the Titans. The Browns released him once Deshaun was activated. He went and signed with the Lions practice squad, and the Titans took him from there. It's the Jaguars won, Mitch, but they didn't win. Look, a win in that scenario was a win, right? That's all you're taking. This isn't college football, but there's some teams like the Buccaneers that maybe I'm starting to sit here and think I think they can win a playoff game. With how Trevor Lawrence played in that game, I don't know if I could sit here and tell you they're going to beat the Chargers, because Trevor Lawrence to me was pretty underwhelming in that game. And I honestly think if the Titans have Ryan Tannehill, one, they're probably not in this spot. They're probably already clinched the division. But if they're in this spot with Ryan Tannehill, I think the Titans win this game. I really do. I think because Tannehill was obviously a veteran, knows the offense, but I think the Titans are another team, Mitch, that we might be talking about here in the next week or so about a new head coach going there, whether they decide to fire Mike Vrabel, whether Vrabel resigns, or are we talking about them maybe potentially moving up in the draft for a quarterback? Because what does that tell you? That you draft Malik Willis in the draft and you don't have enough faith in him to put him in a playoff game, and you go with a guy that was with your team for 17 days.
I mean, he was what, a fourth round selection? Malik Willis was third round pick. There is still something to be said about a guy still developing. And when you're in this situation, you want to go with somebody who has experience. And if Dobbs had been a second or third year starter, I don't think it would have been the case. He's been in the league for a while, so he could at least handle himself mentally. It's not the greatest look. I still think they'll try to focus on him maybe being a guy. I can't imagine they would go for a quarterback this year, because after Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, it's not an amazing crop. It's going to be tough for them this offseason. They have some decisions to make. And as far as Lawrence goes, he didn't play great Thursday night. He was 57% completion percentage, touchdown and interception, 275 yards. His previous 3 games, he had thrown for a combined 7 touchdowns, 1 interception, and his last 2 games, his completion percentage was around over 70%. Last one before that was 83.5. I think he can be he's very capable of producing a good game. It's just going to be very difficult, even though the Chargers have a couple of gaps in there that could easily be exposed. So it's an interesting matchup. It's a very name-worthy matchup, which I very much like. And then you go into these other playoff matchups where we saw yesterday 3 teams battle it out for the AFC last AFC spot. Obviously, the Steelers didn't get it because the Dolphins ended up winning on 3 field goals in a stadium. I thought that was going to be scoregami. I swear to myself, there's no way 11-6 ever happened, and it did in the 1999 NFC title game between the Buccaneers and the Rams. So there you go. But then I saw what the Steelers did. I saw what the Dolphins did, and then you see what the Patriots did. We wondered if they were going to have a chance in that game, and they kept it up for sure. But there was obviously some magic in Buffalo Stadium, especially when you see 2, not 1, just the opener, 2 kickoff returns from Nyheim Hines in the Damar Hamlin game, essentially.
And Mitch, I don't know if you saw, but the fact that it was 3 years and 3 months since the Bills had last returned a kickoff for a touchdown, Damar Hamlin, number 3. I think the coolest part about that, obviously getting a little off track here, because we know Damar Hamlin is now awake, talking, breathing on his own, still listed as critical condition, but obviously it looks like he's on the mend. Watching that replay of the opening kickoff return for a touchdown and seeing the reactions of all the coaches on the sideline, like McDermott couldn't believe it. Josh Allen couldn't believe it. And then they go to a specific camera view, Mitch, and Jim Nantz said the place was going wild. And to see the camera shaking up and down, just to know how loud that place had to have been for that camera to not even been able to focus because it was so loud, was so cool. And you knew the Patriots were going to be up against it. Obviously, that was going to be an emotional game for Buffalo. And really, Mitch, it could have gone either way with Buffalo in terms of emotion. Sometimes you're so high off emotion that it can hurt you, but they played the right style of game. And give New England credit, Mitch. They looked like a team that was going to try to win and get in, and they kept it close, but just wasn't enough to stop the Bills. The Bills get the 2 seed now. They do get the number 2 seed, so that's big, but I think looking ahead at the wild card weekend, Mitch, I think if there's one game that I don't think is going to be close, I think it's the one the Bills are in. We don't know what's going on with Miami Dolphins quarterback situation yet.
Right.
Tua may play. That is who the Bills play. in case we didn't say that yet. They play the Bills. Bills host the Dolphins on Sunday at 1:00 on CBS. They are a 10.5-point favorite. That is the largest spread in Wild Card Weekend.
I believe it.
I personally think the Bills right now, Mitch, are a team that has a lot of things going for them and are playing with a lot of emotion. And so I would not want to get in the way of the Buffalo Bills right now.
One team that we could maybe see them match up with the Bills is the Cincinnati Bengals, who put to bed any talks of a coin toss with the win yesterday against the Ravens. They're going to play the Ravens again, but they're going to play in Cincinnati for sure. We're going to have, after all the talk Cincinnati had about being kind of ticked about the way the NFL handled the situation, which I thought was at least capable enough to considering the circumstances.
Yes.
I know it sucks for them, but considering what was going on, it was kind of a last resort thing.
We've never been in that situation before, Mitch. Right? You know what I mean? Like there's no protocol or rule that sets you up for something that like we saw last week. So I get it, right? Teams were going to be frustrated, but at the same time, Bengals winning put a lot of things to bed. But I get teams being upset, but at the same time, it'd be different if we've seen something like that before. We witnessed something for the first time that we've never seen before in the NFL. So it was an unprecedented ruling and decision.
And then at the NFC, it was kind of boring at the top because all of the top 3 teams ended up winning to make sure that the Eagles would stay at the number 1 spot. Yeah, Eagles, Niners, and Vikings. Vikings have an interesting matchup that we'll get to in a second. Tampa Bay lost to Atlanta. They basically gave up. Tom Brady was taken out of the game in the second quarter. Dallas weirdly dropping a game to Washington. That felt like a game that they just kind of let fly by him because Washington was playing terribly up to that point. And then the Giants they were on the losing end of that Eagles game, but they're still in the playoffs. And now they got to face Minnesota. That to me, Mitch, is a game that is very capable of getting Kirk Cousins to the divisional round. And if you have to go up with a potential matchup of whoever they could play upcoming, there's a path that I'm looking at that could easily put Cousins in the NFC Championship. And I know I sound weird saying that, but depending on the seeding and depending on who wins this weekend, I'm curious as to what will happen.
Mitch, on the flip side, I think if there's one game that the Vikings could trip up against or, trip up and lose, it's this week. This is a team that beat on a game-winning field goal as time expired just a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about that was in Minnesota. Now the Giants go back to a place where they already have some confidence playing. They know to a degree what that atmosphere is going to be like, right? Obviously, playoff atmosphere, wherever you go, is always going to be turned up a notch or two. I could see the New York Giants upsetting Kirk Cousins and the G-Men. I know you have been a Kirk Cousins supporter. I, on the other hand, have not. Well, not a fan, but in terms of the hate I give him, I don't think
the results speak for themselves. They're 13-4.
You're right, absolutely. They're not the top seed I'm picking to lose this weekend. I'll put it that way. I think there's a number of teams, and we'll talk about that in our next episode later this week. I think there's a number of teams on upset watch. I wouldn't be shocked if they lose. I do expect them to win, but I guess I could kind of get behind you to get to the NFC Championship.
Well, 2 versus 7 is interesting too, because it's San Francisco going up against Seattle. Seattle was able to pull out an overtime victory over the Rams yesterday, which was unfortunate for me and a lot of Lions fans because I wanted to see that Sunday night game be a do or die game. Yep. And it was a die game for Green Bay because I did not think Detroit would be able to go in there and pull off that victory, but they did. Yeah. And now there's a lot of people that saying Detroit has sent Aaron Rodgers into either retirement or a new team. Who knows? But that felt like weirdly like the end to me. I don't know. And I don't know if it will be. It had that vibe for some reason.
I wanted it to be a winner take all game last night. Absolutely. Yeah. I didn't think the Detroit Lions had a shot. But Dan Campbell made sure that if they weren't going, the Packers weren't going. You heard how many players did you hear say that? Or there was players on Twitter tweeting that if they can't go, we can't go. FTP. Yep. I'll leave that for everyone else's interpretation for themselves. I wanted the Lions so bad, Mitch. Mm-hmm. So bad. I do think, though, not that I'm going to pick them to lose. I do think the San Francisco 49ers are the biggest question mark in the playoffs.
Okay.
They obviously are in a very good spot being the 2 seed playing at home. Where's Brock Purdy going to be at? he's played in a spot now, Mitch, where I believe he played one game and they clinched a playoff spot, and everything else was just kind of home field advantage. It wasn't major risk. It wasn't win or go home. You knew you were going to the playoffs. How does he handle now knowing he's in a win or go home situation? How does the Seattle Seahawks defense that has seen him already game plan for him? I think it's going to be interesting to see what the Niners do. I think it's also crazy that the Seattle Seahawks are in the playoffs. Like, let's just start there. They traded away Russell Wilson and played Geno Smith, who had been a backup for years. And now they're in the playoffs and have multiple picks and got rid of a guy they said they didn't believe in. And it looks like they've made the right move. Just a tremendous season by the Seahawks. I would have never, ever, ever, and I definitely didn't in our preseason predictions, say the Seattle Seahawks were going to make the playoffs. I figured they'd be one of the top or bottom 5 teams in the NFL. And here I'm eating my words as they make it at 9-8. So good for them. Aaron Rodgers isn't retiring. I'm not here for that. We've seen this before. We've seen it, what, the last 2 years he's done this? Oh, I'm going to think about retiring. Oh, I might request a trade. Buddy guy just signed an extension last year, and it made him lose his best teammate of all time, Devontae Adams.
Yes.
So I don't think he'll get retired. I don't think he'll retire. Trade. I'm open to that conversation.
It's an interesting scenario because I think there's a cutoff point to where if he were to retire, Green Bay would owe him like $100 million via that extension. Whereas if it's after a certain date, it's only 30 some million. The Purdy thing is interesting to me because he's thrown for 13 touchdowns so far, 4 interceptions. His last game might have been his best, 15 of 20 for 3 touchdowns, 178 yards. So it could be like Jimmy Garoppolo for the last couple of years that the Niners went on runs where you don't have to solely rely on him, but if the defenses can force the Niners to rely on him, that could make it a very serious game, especially with Seattle, where if this was the Seattle defense from a few years ago, I'd be very curious as to what they would force on Purdy. But yeah, we got 2 versus 7, Vikings and Giants, and then Buccaneers and Cowboys, but in Tampa Bay. That's a hard one for even a 12-5 team in Dallas to win because I don't know. I think we're kind of held up on their reputation for dropping these playoff games, and it's hard for me to go against Tom Brady even at his worst.
And it doesn't help that the Dallas Cowboys have looked as bad as they have coming down the stretch, right? I mean, there's been some games where Dak has looked pretty bad, other just blunders by the Cowboys. I told myself I wasn't going to be suckered into taking the Buccaneers and Tom Brady because of how bad they are. But Mitch, I'm going to be suckered into taking the Buccaneers and Tom Brady. He also has never lost to the Cowboys. Like, never in his 5 million year career. He's not going to lose now. He's not. They've gotten 2 linemen back. They're starting to get healthy again. They're ending the season on a high note. Obviously, the exception yesterday. I mean, I don't like Cowboys, but I'm just sick and tired of Tom Brady.
We will save a lot of that talk for Thursday's episode, and we will save the rest of our talk for this episode right after these messages here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
It takes a lot of practice to have a winning team. Albin Title has over 100 years of combined experience handling real estate, title, and escrow transactions. They serve Tuscarawas, Stark, Carroll, Harrison counties, and more. So choose Albin Title for your next home refinance, sale, or purchase. They'll get it done quickly and professionally. Contact Albin Title at 330-334-5800 or visit their website albintitle.com. Let them put their experience to work for you.
Hard work is something you're accustomed to. Van Nostrand Young understands that principle. Our access is achieved with organizations like Grange Insurance. Safety and prevention specialists utilize our VanCan assessments process to ensure that you and your colleagues are in the best hands. You want the safest environment for your business, and we can guide you there.
Call Van Nostra and Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
If you're purchasing a new home, the team at Hartzler's Quality Housing is here to help. Take advantage of record low interest rates to make your new home a reality. Locally owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's Quality Housing has the experience to guide you through the process. You'll find a wide selection of model homes on site to fit any budget. Open 6 days a week just off I-77. You can also visit them online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
When others treat your fries as an afterthought, all you're left with are cold, soggy fries. That's why Wendy's new fries are ones you won't forget, guaranteed to be hot and crispy, or we'll replace them. We're talking natural cut, skin-on fries, perfectly seasoned with a hint of sea salt. In fact, they're even preferred almost 2-to-1 over McDonald's. These are fries so hot and crispy, they beg a new question.
What would you like with your fries?
Try them today, only at Wendy's.
At participating U.S. Wendy's, taste preference based on a national taste test by an independent research company.
And we're back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell alongside Mitchell Balla. Mitch, we got two topics here for this final segment here. We'll start off with the Cavaliers. They were able to pull up a victory over the Phoenix Suns last night, their second victory over Phoenix in the past month. This one was final last night. If I could pull it up for once in my life, whatever the score was last night, the Cavaliers were able to play well against this Phoenix team. They're currently standing pretty well in the conference so far this year. Cavs are at 26-15 now, still in fourth place. Good victory last night on the road to move to 8-11 on the road, which isn't great compared to your 18-4 record. I mean, what do you see in a matchup like that gives you hope if the Cavaliers have to travel for their victories?
I think the big thing, Mitch, that I take away right away is we are officially at the halfway point. That was game 41 last night, 26-15. If you can somehow replicate that record in the second half, Mitch, you're going to be sitting very pretty at 52-30. I would say, though, Mitch, I think that you look at the beginning of the season, how it started. There was the first game loss at Toronto that you lost Garland a quarter in. You were still trying to learn how to play with each other, right? You look at some of these other games the Cavs have had on the road, some blunders, obviously, but at the same time, with how they're playing, Mitch, and where they're at in the standings, I'm not worried, because if they keep playing like this, you're not gonna have to worry about going on the road until second round, potentially, depending on who you play.
Right.
In terms of having home court advantage. And even then, you've proven that you can beat the Celtics in Boston. We have not gone to Brooklyn yet. We'll have to see how that goes when we go there. That's also a team I'm not sure how we match up against. KD obviously got hurt last night. We'll see what happens to them, but that's also a team that shot 60% from three.
Yeah.
Will they do it again? Who knows? Milwaukee's the one place I don't want to go because the Cavs don't win there. But you mentioned road versus home. I would like to see them pick it up here, especially with where we're at in the schedule. You know, obviously we're coming up. I do think that our game tomorrow night on Tuesday is going to be a playoff-like environment. Donovan Mitchell's return to Utah. And we'll have to see who is all playing for the Jazz, whether it is Sexton is playing maybe now, or Larry Markin and Mitch balling. This dude is on fire. Can the Cavs stop that? But afterwards, Mitch, you played Portland. You're better than them. You should take care of them. Minnesota right now is reeling. They have some injuries. There are some road wins now for the Cavs. They should be able to stack up. And I would say if you can win 2 of your next 3, that's solid. I would be more than okay with that, going 3-2 on a 5-game West Coast road trip. And then you have to go play a team like Memphis that is right there in terms of record with you. They have 2 less losses, but the same amount of wins. But then you go to the Knicks. You go to the Rockets. The Thunder, I think you're better than. The Cavs, I think, Mitch, got put in a spot early this season where they played some really tough teams early as you're trying to gel a young team together. I'm not that worried about it. And if they keep winning like this, I'm not worried about it at all because you're going to have at least one home playoff series.
Yeah, I would say so. And looking at the Suns team, obviously they don't have Devin Booker or Chris Paul, but they've gone on a slide too, to the point where they've dropped 6 straight now. They're 9 out of the last 10 have been losses, and they're now in the play-in part of the standings in the West, where they're 20-21. They're under 500 now for the first time this season. Does the Suns championship window, which started off 2 seasons ago when they took the Bucks to 6 games, and where we thought they would go last year, leading the West before dropping a bomb in against Dallas, is that championship window over for them because of how many good teams there are in the West?
It's certainly not getting bigger. It might be open still, but it's probably getting smaller, Mitch. I mean, you're talking about right now, if the playoffs started today, they're playing Golden State in the playing game. Like, that's not an easy game. The other thing is Chris Paul isn't getting any younger. And Chris Paul, I think, has been a huge factor of how the Suns have been able to have this resurgence in the past few years and where they've gotten to where they've gotten. But you're at a point now, Mitch, where they're as youthful as some of those players are. A lot of guys are hurt. 6 guys were out last night for the Suns? Devin Booker, Chris Paul. I know Crowder hasn't played a whole lot this year. There was a number of other players that didn't play, but I think it's safe to say that if they don't figure something out here soon, if something were to happen this year where they don't make the playoffs, Mitch, I think it's over. Their championship window is over, because if you let a team, the likes of Sacramento, who, Mitch, I think in our NBA preview, and I didn't think they'd be very good, in the playoffs, the Clippers, Mitch, who are barely playing Kawhi Leonard, who's coming back from a torn ACL. And then right on your heels right now, you have the Lakers, who have won 5 games in a row. I mean, the West is so low. I think both conferences are loaded. Let me put it that way. The Suns' championship window is closing if they don't make it this year.
Yeah, I could see that. Will be interesting to see. I'm looking at those numbers too. A lot of teams really struggling on the road this year. Look at Golden State. They're 3-16 away from Oracle, which is unbelievable. Like, the reigning NBA champions are not able to be at the top of the West this year.
The best team on the road is the Celtics and Nets in the entire NBA. Celtics 13-7 and Nets 14-8.
And that's the thing. They don't even have to be like amazing on the road, but if you're balanced at home and on the road, you have the perfect combination there to win wherever you play. But then we finally go over to tonight's game in Los Angeles, the big one, the national championship game between Georgia and TCU. What's this?
That's their frog.
I didn't know. I didn't know that.
Frog.
Very cool. Okay. So now we go over to a championship game in which it could either be the first time a serious college football blue blood has not taken the title in the college football playoff era. I wouldn't call TCU a blue blood. You got Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. I guess I wouldn't say Clemson either, even though they made themselves into one of the top ones over the last decade. So maybe not one of the traditional ones, but Georgia, Georgia could be the first team ever to repeat in the college football playoff era, which shows how difficult it is. I said it. I think Georgia's going to win this game by at least 2 touchdowns, but I wouldn't be surprised if TCU keeps it close late.
I have no idea, because my head tells me Georgia runs away with this easily, and the under hits, which is 63.5, because I don't think TCU's seen a defense like Georgia's all year. My heart tells me just to keep riding with the underdog, a team that was 200 to 1 odds before the season opened to even have this opportunity.
That's true.
And nobody thought they were going to beat Michigan, although I did. I just don't know, Mitch. I don't know. This is just the biggest discrepancy in terms of play that we've seen during the college football playoff era, I think, in a national championship game, because the style of play in the Big 12 is completely different to the style of play in the SEC. But Georgia's defense from last year to this year has just remained so dominant that I truthfully don't believe TCU's seen anything like it. And I think Georgia has seen their best team in Ohio State.
Yeah.
Generally, you see these teams get a scare somewhere, and I think that was Georgia's scare. I think the right call here would be to say what you're saying. I think Georgia wins tonight and covers the 13-point spread. I really do. I think they win by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I hope I'm wrong. I hope I can watch Max Duggan just perform out of his mind and lead the TCU Horned Frogs to a national championship. That would be so cool.
That's the thing. It would be very cool to see this amazing story come to its great end with TCU. I wouldn't be upset if Georgia won again, just because, they had to sit behind the likes of Alabama and LSU for years, and they could finally get their moment in the sun. But after this year is when it starts to become annoying for the rest of the country. And then you just wipe the slate clean come the fall. Before we go, I had this topic of discussion. I don't know if you saw this tweet from Josh Pate, who is the host of Late Kick Live and Late Kick Podcast, covers a lot of college football stuff for CBS Sports HQ. He is in Los Angeles. He is at SoFi Stadium. There is a picture that he posted. It's one of those like standing placards that you'll see outside of an arena or a stadium of something, like gives like a message or something. It says, tailgating prohibited. So there is 0 tailgating allowed for the college football playoff national championship game that is taking place tonight. Mitch, it's taking away from a grand tradition that is involved with college football. I want to say I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, it is kind of a case of, come on, let the kids have some fun at least. And that, I don't know. I'm usually the kind of person that tries to at least understand the sort of corporate moves that have to be made when it comes to sports. But this one, I'm feeling like, okay, how many people could possibly be there? And what could they possibly do to cause that much nonsense and ruckus? This isn't a case of like the Buffalo Bills Mafia.
Yeah.
It's 2 college programs, and it's not even 2 of the rowdiest ones.
And you're doing it at a place that already holds football games that, I don't know, I would assume the Chargers and Rams fans tailgate. Or maybe does SoFi not? Like, is this a college football playoff decision, or is this like SoFi's decision?
Well, according to this report I found from the LA Times, it says commentary: no tailgating at national championship game. Blame the CFP, not SoFi or California. I'm just kind of going through the details of this. The backlash was predictable. Republican Georgia Governor Brian Kemp couldn't resist taking a shot Thursday morning from his Twitter account. I guess this was in a few days in the making. He said, quote, Kemp said, quote, while California may not know this, in the South, a tailgate with friends and family is the only way to prepare for a big game. When Georgia hosts the 2025 national championship, which I'm not even sure if that's official yet, I'll have to check, we'll make sure fans are able to tailgate, even if it's at the state capitol. So, that is kind of the difference between the South in college football and somewhere like the West Coast, where football isn't ingrained into the culture. Obviously, it's, in terms of SoFi, it's not ingrained to the Rams or the Chargers fans, depending on who you ask. But I don't know. I'm kind of on the side of like, come on, guys, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I'm with you there. And also, Mitch, there's probably still gonna be people at tailgate.
Oh, there's there's going to be.
Let's be honest. How many times do we know as Browns fans in the Muni lot that you're not allowed to have beverages? And you walk through there and everybody has one.
Even during the COVID era, when people weren't supposed to grind together, there were still people getting together. 2025, exactly. By the way, is going to be in Atlanta. And that's another thing too. The upcoming stadiums for the national championship game are SoFi, obviously. Next year, Energy Stadium in Houston, Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta, Hard Rock in Miami. I saw a clip from Joel Klatt's show the other day, and he made the proposal that the Rose Bowl should be the destination for the national championship every single year. I like the idea of that. The Rose Bowl is one of the top college football stadiums in the world.
Yeah.
Every year, though, I don't know if that would be the right move, especially because that would kind of trump the Rose Bowl, if anything, that of like the granddaddy game.
Yeah, no, I like the idea because I do think that I think it's the stadium that holds the most, iconic games and just scenery and atmosphere. But to do it every year, I think you would start to diminish its value by doing it every year. I do like having it in the rotation. I like the idea though, but I mean, I don't know.
And I get why I would as a college football fan, it would be nice to see more college football centric stadiums become more involved with the rotation that they have for the playoff set. First of all, the big college football stadiums are already hosting a lot of the New Year's Six games. That's why they have the New Year's Six to operate as the semifinal games. When it comes to the national championship, you want to get the most people in there. You want to get them in the municipal urban areas. And a lot of college football teams don't operate in the middle of cities. I mean, Ohio Stadium kind of operates in Columbus, but not exactly in downtown compared to something like Nationwide Arena. Then that's already Columbus compared to something like Miami or Los Angeles or Houston. I don't know. It's a kind of an interesting little tidbit there. Also, really quick before we sign off, Jim Schwartz, the Browns are interviewing him for the defensive coordinator opening, according to Albert Breer. There was another name that I sent to you, and that was Seahawks associate head coach Sean Desai for the position. So you got those two. You got Gerard Mayo. You got Brian Flores, who will be the Browns defensive coordinator coming up here within the next campaign for the Browns. Mitch, what is our fact of the day?
Your fact of the day is the human nose can distinguish at least 1 trillion different odors.
It can process 1 trillion different. Wow. Okay. That's fascinating.
According to recent research by nature.com.
I didn't realize there were 1 trillion different types of odors. I mean, I can only probably name, if you told me to list off at least 100 smells you've ever experienced in your life, I feel like I would struggle to get to 75 or 80.
I don't know about that.
It's like smell of oranges, garbage. I can't even do two on the spot.
If you say soap, is that just like, do you have to say
that depends.
Soap or like I have 4 different body wash scents in there. Like
Exactly. That gets into a gray area that we have no time to discuss here as we are approaching the end of the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Thank you for listening and or watching.